In 2024, I made 4 videos about the Su-57 because there was news and you, dear viewers, were very interested. 4 videos on a single aircraft are way too much. Actually, you seem to be borderline obsessed with the Su-57 and the Su-75. And in fact, when the short video dropped, when this clip became repeated over and over on social media, I was inundated by requests of discussing it. So I thought...
Here we go again.
Yes, that's what I thought. Last time we discussed the Su-57 was in mid-November 2024, when Sergei Bogdan left the crowd open-mouthed with his flight demonstration at Zhuhai Air Show. There were a lot of discussions about the aircraft stealth, the build quality, but we covered it already, so have a look at the original video if you're interested. At Zhuhai, though, came the announcement that there is finally an official customer for the Su-57. Roboros Export did not reveal the customer, so the usual wild game of guessing started. The most likely candidate is Algeria, who placed a letter of intent a few years ago, and maybe they're following up. Other names thrown around are Iran, North Korea, and one of the Central Asian states. Iran just received the first Su-35, so it is unlikely that they will introduce 2 new models at the same time. The other options are just vague rumors, but there is another interesting prospect customer. A few months ago, the Russians made India a proposal that is very difficult to refuse. So Russia proposed that the Su-75 would be produced in India and exclusively in India, with all the export orders being sourced from India. Moreover, they proposed almost full technology transfer and the freedom for India to produce and modify the aircraft for their own internal market as they saw fit. The Su-75 project, which is not a priority for the Russian government, obviously is in need of a boost. We don't know if anything is coming from this proposal, but there is other and more interesting news, and actually more relevant for this video. Russia and India are in talks again about the Su-57.
Here we go again.
At the beginning of the program, India was a co-developer of the aircraft and the financial burden was split between the two countries. India, though, left the program when diverging requirements emerged and the Russians were not keen on sharing the technology. So India started a national program, the AMCA, to acquire strategic independence on stealth and 5th-generation technology. The project is currently moving forward, but the timeline is extending. Despite improving relations with China, India is facing various geopolitical challenges. Bangladesh just went through a regime change operation, and Pakistan, with Chinese and Turkish support, is modernizing its forces. With the AMCA being late, the Indians are in need of a stopgap. So at the beginning of December, news emerged of a Russian proposal for a Su-57 contract at a very convenient price, and Moscow is willing to accept rupees rather than dollars. With this sale should come some technology transfer and the possibility to modify the aircraft as the Indians see fit. All considered, it is not impossible that these talks may bring to something. I say so because the US is really desperate to sell to India, and they had the door shut on their face already when the Rafale was chosen as the new carrier fighter for the Indian Navy. Buying from Russia may cause some issues with the CAATSA sanctions, but buying from the USA is seen in India as a straitjacket that would limit their options. We will keep an eye on this, but there is other news coming directly from Russia. So, a few press releases have appeared in Russia suggesting aircraft improvements. The first is that some 6th-generation features are being considered for implementation on the Su-57. We don't know which features, we don't know the timeline, we basically know nothing. So I'm inclined to take this piece of information with a massive pinch of salt.
Here is the salt, sir.
Otis is a figure of speech. What was I saying? Yes. There is news about the aircraft propulsion as well. As many of you will know, the Su-57 engines, even those installed on a production aircraft, are not the final engines. The AL-41F1 is a derivative of the current Su-35 engines, and it is considered to be inadequate for the aircraft. In particular, its thrust is limiting the flight envelope where supercruise is possible. Watching the aircraft fly, it really doesn't seem a big issue, but this is the official position of the VKS, which in fact doesn't want to accept more aircraft with the old engine. It is possible that we will have another lot of aircraft by the end of December 2024 with the old engines, but this should be, in theory, the last. On the flip side, it seems that the Isdelia 30 is ready, finally. It received its military name of AL-51F1 earlier this year, and all the aircraft delivered next year will feature the final engine. It has more thrust than the AL-41, it is lighter, and it is built with fewer parts, being simpler to maintain and likely even more reliable. It is easy to tell the old and the new engine apart visually. The old engine has a conventional nozzle, while the new engine has serrated nozzle petals. Well, at least this is what everyone was thinking till we saw this. Honestly, I was surprised when I saw this nozzle. I mean, the Russians already have a 360-degree thrust vectoring nozzle, and this seems a regression. We already knew that it was in development, we saw slides and renders, but I still did not understand why they wanted anything like this. Then I saw the real thing on video, and yeah, I'm still puzzled. But I'm getting ahead of me. First of all, 2D and 3D thrust vectoring nozzles. 3D vectoring nozzles are round while 2D are rectangular. That is the commonly given definition, and it is wrong. The term 2D or 3D refers to how many degrees of freedom the nozzle can exert its control on. An aircraft in motion has 6 degrees of freedom, the spatial coordinates and the angular coordinates pitch, roll and yaw. A 2D nozzle can exert authority on 2 of the 3 angular coordinates, while a 3D nozzle can on all 3. The 2D nozzles of the F-22 operate in pitch by moving the nozzle flaps symmetrically and in roll by moving them asymmetrically. The Russian 3D nozzles can vector the thrust in a cone centered on the engine symmetry axis, thus exerting control on all the angular coordinates. They can work either symmetrically, antisymmetrically, or be completely independent. Some erroneously believe that the Russian nozzles only move antisymmetrically on a sort of diagonal line as seen from the back. But this is the case on the Su-30 MKI, an export variant of an older aircraft. On the Su-57, they move independently and around all the 360 degrees. Some may say that this is not a really useful feature in combat, but some pilots, and surely the Russians, think otherwise. This capability makes for great airshow exhibitions, and some of these airshow maneuvers don't have any practical use, but they show how controllable are these machines in every situation, for example if damaged in combat or with an accidental asymmetric load. The old AL-41F1 did not feature serrated nozzle petals, which is a radar reflecting feature. Not great for stealth. But the new AL-51F1 does, so even this stealth shortcoming would have been addressed with the new engine. So, why? Why? Well, this is not the first flat nozzle the Russians work on. There have been a few experiments in the past, but this one seems new. In this modern implementation we have 2 flaps, each one composed of 2 sections. It seems that the nozzle throat is where the hinge is located. The sides of the nozzle are fixed, and in this image it seems that they're just fairings. It is interesting to notice this slit on the trailing edge. It shows that air is flowing inside the flap. This could help with the flap cooling, but also with the reduction of the engine infrared signature. In fact, a layer of cold air spilled by the engine compressor from the intakes around the exhaust plume helps reducing the infrared signature by increasing the atmospheric mixing. This grit on the sidewalls, though, doesn't seem to be as lit for an airflow. It seems to be just like a structural element. This nozzle is clearly just a prototype, so I'm not surprised to see some imperfections. In fact, according to the manufacturer, 90% of the nozzle will be 3D printed. The fact that the nozzle axis is not horizontal makes it a 3D nozzle. The jet deflection will generate a force that will cause a momentum around the pitch and the yaw axis, while the asymmetric deflection will cause a momentum in roll. However, the old axial symmetric nozzle could move independently, giving much more flexibility to the flight control laws. In this way, you will always have coupling between pitch and yaw, which is a regression in terms of maneuverability. Interestingly, in this picture we also see this structure inside the engine, which I assume it is the AL-51. I believe this is a radar blocker. That is an element that is there to screen the inside of the engine from radar radiation penetrating inside and reflecting out. It is quite a hefty component, to be honest, but it is too far back to be a fuel injector or any other part of the afterburner. And for those who think that this is a weird solution, well, both the F-18 and the F-35 have one. So actually it is quite mainstream. Now, all this is well and good, but the question remains. Why? Why the Su-57 needs this? Flat nozzles, to be honest, are not really great. Compared with an axial symmetric nozzle, they are less efficient. I don't have an analytic solution for that, but sources say that the loss of thrust could be around 5% or even higher, which is quite impressive. It is quite a lot of waste. And it is easy to understand why. The axial flow is constrained into a rectangular section, and the change of direction requires to expend energy. The large V section could be an attempt to slightly reduce this change of direction, but I'm just speculating. Moreover, vortices tend to form in the corners, which is an additional waste of energy. In fact, I think that this nozzle is going to be applied to a future and uprated variant of the AL-51 to make sense. Otherwise, they spent all this time to have an engine with enough thrust just to waste a considerable amount with the new nozzle. So, why would you want flat nozzles then? Well, because they are better for stealth. A round nozzle will always have one petal ideally positioned to reflect the radar radiation, while a flat nozzle will geometrically reflect it away. Moreover, the rectangular shape of the flow increases the mixing of the exhaust plume with the atmospheric air, thus reducing the temperature. And with lower temperature comes a reduced infrared signature. It is the reason why aircraft like the B-2 or the S-70 show a very flat nozzle. Furthermore, compared with the previous generation, these are much simpler. This nozzle has two actuators, while the old configuration needed one actuator for each petal. There is simply less stuff to maintain, and there is simply less stuff that could break. So a flat nozzle should help with maintenance and reliability. So, all considered, why does this nozzle even exist? The one reason I can think of is that, comparing the benefits of stealth and simplicity against the loss of thrust and maneuverability, the designers believe that the balance is in favor of the flat nozzle, which honestly, it is not out of line with the way the Russians do things. Anyway, we just have to wait and see. Thank you very much for having given me your time. I consider this a honor and a privilege. And if you have liked what you have seen, please consider supporting the channel on Patreon by being a member, on GoFundMe, or by any other of the means available. A really heartfelt thank you to all those who have already helped. And if you can't help, and it's perfectly fine, do it only if you can, please consider interacting in any way. Please just subscribe. Many regular viewers are not subscribed. Hit like, hit the bell, leave a comment, interact in any way. So, this is the end. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next time.